And many clients, unfortunately, who end up working with me in my coaching program have a similar story where at one point in their childhood, whether it be from their own parents, from a peer, from a friend, from a bully in the school playground, made a comment on their physical appearance, or a family member made a comment on their eating habits. And that unfortunately planted a little bit of a seed that up until that moment, that child, you in the past, never even had a second thought about what you ate, how it made you look. And all of a sudden in that moment, your body, your appearance, your weight is now linked to your sense of worthiness. Okay? I didn't think that impacted me so much until years later I looked back and went, actually, I think that set off a bit of a chain reaction. Because I remember all of a sudden out of never feeling self-conscious with my body, starting to feel self-conscious with my body. And I guess I associated with, well, I'll not get love and acceptance from my dad or from my coach at football or from the people who I play football with. I'm not very good at football. I've got to watch what I eat. And I remember going on a diet and my dad put me on pasta and got me eating steaks, and probably a good thing to do. He probably could have approached it in a better way, but what I was ultimately eating, it wasn't a restrictive diet or anything like that. You just said, right, let's clean up your diet. Let's make sure you eat protein and let's make sure you have carbohydrates. And he kind of showed me how to cook and things like that. So it wasn't all bad, but I just remember the way it was maybe said and how a 10-year-old wouldn't take that as feedback or constructive feedback. They would just take it as criticism. So I remember feeling very self-conscious that I had to, right, I've got to eat better to prove myself and to prove my dad that I'm good enough, that I'm worthy enough to be this footballer, that everyone around me is telling me that I could be. And like I say, at the time, innocent 10-year-old, you don't really think nothing of it. But looking back, I'm like, that definitely set a chain reaction off to where I was now conscious of my body and I wasn't conscious of my body before. Now, I don't know if you're listening to this and you have a similar backstory where you felt criticised by a parent, or you suddenly become aware in maybe your early teenage years or adolescence years, or maybe at 10 or 11 years old, where you suddenly become aware of, my body is something that other people judge. And up until that point, it would never even enter your head. And it's almost like that childhood innocence about your body and your appearance is taken away overnight. This obviously starts to develop as you get into a teenager. You start developing sex hormones. You start all of a sudden thinking, I'll never fancy girls. And my grandma's like, oh, have you got a crush on this girl? I'm like, no, girls are horrible. Then all of a sudden you're 12, 13-year-old and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting all these strange feelings. I'm blushing around these girls. I'm starting to get pictures in my mind of kissing girls and what it would be like to be with the girl. And you start discovering all of that. And it's a very weird time. If you listen to this right now and you've got teenage children or you've got young children or maybe even remembering yourself in your childhood years, you probably remember like all of a sudden you start getting these thoughts and feelings about the opposite sex that you never had before. And it's a very confusing time. Coincide that time when your sex hormones are kicking in, you're going from a child, becoming an adolescent, becoming a teenager, becoming a young man or a young adult. All of a sudden you have this sense of people see me, people notice me, people judge me. I've got to look like this. I've got to act like that. I've got to impress people. I've got to be validated. And your entire childhood innocence is gone. The moment that you start caring about what people think of you in terms of how you look, how you act, your confidence levels, your body, your physical appearance, your weight, your fashion sense,